You're listening to Where We Live with Gene and Tony.
This is Gene and Tony. We're broadcasting live from the Concierge Landscape Studios. Our show today is brought to you by Extreme Exteriors. Right now it's time for a message from the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association. The MHA Minute is brought to you by Pest Control Services. When you need an exterminator, you want someone reliable, punctual, and effective, and that's Greg Keener at Pest Control Services, 952-894-9748. Pest Control Services is a proud member of Angie's List and the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association. That's Pest Control Services, 952-894-9748.
If you're renting out a property for the first time, there's a lot you need to know so that you can do it successfully and, frankly, keep yourself out of trouble. Luckily, there's a statewide resource with all the tools you need to run your new business successfully. In fact, the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association regularly holds a seminar called Accidental Landlord, specifically designed for people who are renting out a property for the first time. They also have residential leases, security deposit agreements, a lead disclosure, and lots of other forms. They even have brochures on the principles of successful property management and the eviction process that you can download for free. So if you want to know more about the Accidental Landlord Seminar or other classes about owning, managing, or maintaining anything from a single unit to a growing apartment portfolio, visit the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association's website, mmha.com. That's two M's, mmha.com.
We want to ask our listeners to please call in with your stories or your opinions on the topics we're addressing today. You can call us at 651-289-4488. You can be on the air, or you can leave your question with our producer, Bill, or you can email gene@ncmgi.com.
And if you're just joining us, we are talking about some of the proposed major legislation that pertains to homeowners association in the state of Minnesota. And we are very happy and honored to have on the show with us this morning the chief author of this bill, Senate File 926, State Senator Chris Gerlach. Good morning, Chris.
Well, good morning, Gene and Tony.
Good morning.
Thanks for taking some time to be with us this morning. Now, we've just got off the phone with Eileen. Now, is Eileen someone who is in your Senate district, or just someone that you know from the past?
Well, both.
Okay.
I've known Eileen for many, many years, and have even actually worked on some of her campaigns many years ago.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
And subsequent to that, I had been elected to the House and also to the Senate, which is where I'm at now. So I've known Eileen for quite some time.
Okay. And now, there are a number of proposed changes here. We touched on a few of them. Can you kind of outline what are some of the things that you're looking at with this proposed legislation?
Sure. Well, actually, what I should do, I think, first, which I think is helpful, is to tell you a little bit about the process of where we're at on this and where it could be going.
Sure.
Great idea.
Sure, and it comes from what happens countless times during a legislative session, and that is individuals, either residents or constituents in the district or from different organizations, they approach legislators with their ideas of either there ought to be a law for something, or a change to an existing law, or the repeal of an existing law, whatever that might be. They set up an appointment, they come, they talk to us, they have to find a sponsor for their idea. And then I'm not a lawyer, but I guess in the court system you have a grand jury that decides if there's enough smoke there for fire, if there's
sure.
enough to warrant a jury trial. Well, in the sense, I'm serving in this role as the grand jury, saying at this stage, well, Eileen, I don't know everything about this, but I think from what you're telling me that there are some issues here.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did was I said, clearly you're frustrated. You've sought your redress of grievances. You couldn't get the quorum, so you're stuck, and now you've come to me. And I said, first thing we need to do is we need to have you take all of your ideas, what you think needs to be improved or changed, and I sat her down with some of my staff, and they went through and took her ideas without passing judgment on the policy, but they just took the ideas and said, if you were to do what you want to do, this is how it would look on paper. Because without on paper, you really can't discuss anything other than concepts, and you can't really resolve anything. So I said, we've got to get it on paper. So we introduced it, or I did, and the stage we're at now which is very common, is now it's public comment time. Where does the shoe pinch? Who's going to come forward and say, well, we like this or we don't like this, and we take it from there. And that's why it's called the legislative process and not the legislative event. So we go through, and we see, and it'll go through several committees. I'm the chairman of the Senate Commerce and Consumer Protection Committee. This is where the bill would have its first stop, and since I'm the chairman of that committee, I've introduced the bill as the chief author. So I'm in firm control over what we're going to do with this.
So even with Chris, so even when you introduce something as the chief author of the legislation, then once you bring it to the committee, it could be a decision of the committee not to let it go any further out of that committee.
Oh, absolutely.
Too. Okay.
Absolutely. Everybody has a vote, and so we'll have discussions about it. But a lot of it takes place ahead of time. As you know, thousands of bills are introduced, and then some are altered along the way before it even gets to the committee hearing, and then we offer up an amendment called an author's amendment right out of the gate, saying, okay, we've negotiated some things, we have some improvements, we've heard from different groups. These are the changes we want to make. Now the bill's in the form that I want to present it in. And so we do that as sort of an automatic courtesy to the author. Then you begin the formal process in the committee.
Okay.
So,
Chris, I want to ask you something. Is now the time that people who have a concern about this or have an idea about this or want to support this, should they be contacting you?
Absolutely.
And how would they do
that?
that?
This is the best time to do that.
Okay.
Or just either email or call my office. All that information you can just simply look up on the internet and just Google state legislature, find Senator Chris Gerlach. All that information is there. And email is the best. It's best to have it in writing so I can take a look at it and see. And so we're going to take all of those issues that Eileen brought forward, everything from the flagpole to the access to the property, or whether this should include tenants or not. We've already talked about that, and the intent is not to inhibit landlords who are leasing or apartment buildings, or even like you had mentioned earlier, I think, Gene, about there's certainly a difference between single-family detached homes and townhouses side by side, or condo arrangements where they're stacked. There's safety issues with some of those where people are living in closer quarters. So clearly there is a difference in that, but Eileen, I think, makes some very, very valid points, and she we can say, because I asked her the first thing, I'm a small government conservative Republican, and my first question is, well, why should the government intervene? And there's a couple of things. Certainly there is existing statute. Certainly it was mentioned the 515B, that chapter of statute that does have some governing authority over common interest communities, or CICs, and so there is government involvement there already. The question is how much, and the other thing was just private property rights, where there is a role for government to protect private property rights if people feel that those are being infringed, and again, this is what we'll determine during the process is where's the balance point.
Chris, where we come from, we're involved daily with all different forms of common interest communities. And where we come from our perspective, these are microcosms of government right here, these small homeowner associations. They have elections to elect a board of representatives, which you might equate to a city council. And this board of directors then makes decisions for the group as a whole. And I'd like to talk more about that.
Yes, but we're coming up to a hard break. Chris, can you stay with us one more segment?
Certainly. I'll be here.
That will be great. Folks, we're talking to State Senator Chris Gerlach right here on Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be back after these messages.
How sweet